Okay, people. Excuse me, I mean alright. Because of course okay means Order of the Clan. As in the Ku Klux Klan. You know, the people who run around in white hoods and bedsheets, claiming to hate black people? Although it's quite ironic, their very uniforms come from so-called black people. Actually Moors. Anyway, let's get started, shall we? The topic of discussion today is, why are so-called black people misrepresented, mistreated, and even murdered, with no protection under the law, not only in the United States, but across the globe? Now, many of you probably think that you know the answer. Most people will probably say it's quite simple, because they're black. But you'd be right and wrong, which would mean you're only partly correct. So what about the other part? Well, this might sound strange, but to start with, so-called black people aren't really black. That's right, black people are not black. Now hold on a minute, I know what you're thinking. Of course they're not really black, but brown. That's correct, but that's not what I mean. Black people, black as an identity, or should I say, black people as a nation, don't really exist. In order to understand this concept, we must first understand where the term black as a classification of people comes from, and the connotation that it has when used to identify a person or a people. Part 1. The term black. In order to understand the term black, we must first understand another word, nationality. All nations hold three things in common: land, flag, and culture. Nationality implies one's belonging to a nation as a natural or naturalized member. Black is a political classification, in other words, a caste label. Labels such as Negro, Black, and Colored were placed upon so-called blacks in 1774, 5 years before slavery was legally documented, up until 1865 during the time of slavery. Black was a political classification given to slaves, denoting the role that they would play in the present-day government, that of a slave. Due to this slave status, blacks were not considered citizens and would not be protected under constitutional law, the law governing the land. Blacks, however, were considered 3/5 of a human being and were only meant to be used as chattel. In essence, terms such as Negro, Black, and Colored were used to denote the domestic national product. Now, blacks were considered property and could therefore not be citizens. Perhaps you're familiar with the Dred Scott case. For those who are not, Dred Scott versus Stanford, 1857. Dred Scott was a so-called black slave in the United States who unsuccessfully sued for his freedom and the freedom of his wife and 2 daughters. The United States Supreme Court decided 7-2 against Scott, finding that neither he nor any other person of African ancestry could claim citizenship in the United States, and therefore Scott could not bring suit in federal court. Furthermore, it ruled that granting him his freedom would be unconstitutional, as it would improperly deprive Scott's owner of his legal property. Many people believe that due to the Civil Rights Act of 1965, that blacks are now considered full citizens of the United States government. However, this is not true. The Voting Rights Act is merely an act. It was not signed into law. In 1982, Ronald Reagan amended the Voters' Rights Act for only another 25 years. In 2007, it was again renewed under George Bush for another 25 years. I ask you to think, is there any other group of citizens that must have their Voting Rights Act come under review every 25 years? This is clear evidence that blacks, as a group of people, do not enjoy full citizenship in the United States. In order to be considered a citizen of any constitutional government, one must possess a nationality. A nationality is what all other citizens possess, that blacks do not. So, do so-called blacks have a nationality? And if so, what is that nationality? This question will be answered in part 2.